Hello again to this video clip series, A Journey to God in a Very Secularized World. Continuing, as always, to help us to see the hidden traps, the nice words that lead people gently away from God and toward hell. I would like to quote here, continuing, in general, I'm following my article that I wrote, The False Pope Will Fall Silent. I would like to here talk about some words of Pope Paul VI that he pronounced on June 29, 1972, after the Second Vatican Council, denouncing that. He said, appropriate a general audience, he said, by some fissure the smoke of Satan has entered into the temple of God. One no longer trusts the church. So many trust in the first profane prophet who speaks to us in a magazine or in some social slogans, in order to run after him and ask him if he has the formula of true life. We do not realize that instead that we have already become lords and teachers. Doubt has entered our consciousness, and it has entered into the windows which were meant to have been opened to the light. This state of uncertainty reigns even in the church. It was hoped that after the council there would be a day of sunlight in the history of the church. Instead, there came a day of clouds, of darkness, of groping, of uncertainty. You remember when I talked several times in previous video clips that it was well programmed right after the council to interpret the council the way the Freemasons wanted it, in a very slight way, to change the religion, change the theology, change the philosophy, in a very sneaky way, basically to go into relativism, which means the truth no longer comes from God, but from the world and from men. Continue with Pope Paul VI. He said, just before he died, on September 8, 1977, he confirmed his grave judgment in a conversation with Jean Guiton, a French philosopher, a good friend of his. Here are the words of Paul VI recounted by this French philosopher. He said, Pope Paul VI said this, he said, there is a great disturbance at this moment in the world and in the church. And what is in question is the faith. It happens now that I find myself repeating the obscure saying of Jesus in the Gospel of St. Luke, when the Son of Man returns, will he find faith on the earth? It happens that books are published in which important points of the faith are undermined, that the bishops are silent, that these books are not found to be strange, but they accept that leads us away from God. This, according to me, is strange, because the bishops are silent. I read again every once in a while the gospel of the end times, and I realize that in this moment there is emerging some signs of the end times. Are we near the end? This we will never know. It is necessary to always be ready, but everything can still last quite a while. What strikes me when I consider the Catholic world is that a non-Catholic type of thought seems to predominate sometimes within Catholicism, and this non-Catholic thought might become the stronger one within Catholicism in the future, but it will never represent the thought of the Church. A small flock must remain, however small it may be. Also, Father Ratzinger said the same thing in 1969. Because even, Christ came into the world when there was much darkness. The true light that enlightens every man was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him. Yet the world knew him not. He came to his own home, and his own people received him not. This is the Gospel of John, chapter 1. Even when the disciples were amazed at his words and even exceedingly astonished, Christ did not offer false and empty and destructive compromises as so many leaders in the church today are offering to the gullible Christians. But rather Jesus said, with men it is impossible, but with God, for all things are possible with God. Mark 10. When the Jews said, how can this man give his flesh to eat? John 6:52. And then many of his disciples drew back and no longer went about with him. John 6:66. Did you know that this verse, John 6:66, is the only verse in the whole Bible that has the number 666? When they rejected the teaching on the Eucharist and they went away. This, how important the Eucharist is and fundamental. Jesus did not offer compromises or easier or more humanly rational explanations, but even said to the 12, he says, will you also go away? John 6:67. For Jesus knew from the first who those were that did not believe and who it was that should betray him. John 6:64. Judas did not believe in the words of Christ about the Eucharist and ended up betraying Christ. The Eucharist is fundamental. It's fundamental. One of the greatest forces working to destroy the family in society is radical feminism. The goals of feminism are, I list this down here, the destruction of patriarchy, control of reproduction, including contraception, abortion, and reproductive technologies, destruction of the fatherhead family with divorce and illegitimacy made normal. All women in the workforce, no man able to support his family, and free 24-hour daycare, destruction of all male institutions, total sexual liberation, including sex for children, homosexuality, and bisexuality, destruction of worship of God as Father. This is secular feminism. Secular feminism has put man against woman. It has given rise to the war of the sexes, which results in destroying the fundamental relationship between husband and wife, thus greatly undermining the primary institution of humanity created by God, the family. Thus, one of the most fundamental goals of secular feminism is to get rid of the father from the family. A father of the family as God intended the father, not a father that is portrayed on the highly controlled television and mass media. Because it is above all the father of the family that must help the children by his example to confront reality as reality is, and not as each child wants to fabricate reality, as he or she wants according to his or own relativistic egoism spurred on by the very secularized world. The father, by example, helps kids to cope with reality by re-beginning many times, offering his children an example of self-discipline and to be able to say no to the body in self-mortification for true love, so as to be able to say no to the very strong and alluring temptations of today. If the father does not offer this good Christian example, even our falls can become, if the father does offer this good Christian example, even our falls can become a springboard to God instead of being blocked and discouraged, or worse, to embrace the nice and easy lies of Satan. Confession is a powerful sacrament. Do we want reality and truth as we want it, or do we confront reality as reality is and as the truth is, as do mature adults? Question for each one of us. The devil, having ferociously attacked in a very underhanded and sly way the fathers of the families, the priests and the bishops, has led to a great number of fathers, priests, and bishops to not live their vocation from God as men, to not be ready to offer the uncomfortable but saving truth on the cross, to not be ready to sacrifice themselves for their wives, for their families, for their parishes, for their dioceses, for the society, and for the whole world, and above all, for the truth, God, who is Jesus. The truth of God truly makes us free. The truth of the world gives us pleasure today and tomorrow slavery. And thus many youth and adults today did not have a father or a pastor or an evangelical model like Jesus in order to assimilate and to imitate this male model of God in this period of formation, especially as a child up to the age of 12 years of age, when the child is fundamentally formed. How many priests and bishops today, for the true good of their flock, have the courage to imitate the saints and the prophets and say, as St. John the Baptist, the great, as Jesus said, the greatest born of woman, he said to King Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." Mark 6. So many religious leaders and parents seek to please the people without distinguishing, undermining if it is a sin or not. If it truly does good to the person or not. They want the easy way. This is false and destructive love. This is misguided compassion. Few religious leaders today have the courage of the first Pope Peter, the day of the birth of the church, Pentecost, to say, as St. Peter did, Acts 4, "You have crucified Jesus, the author of life, with your grave mortal sins." Pray for priests and bishops. I end this video clip here. May God bless you and Mary guide you.